Morning. Sorry for the late start, but we had a few technical problems to overcome. And as for those of you who've been following, you know we have a very long day ahead of us, so we're going to try to move along at a reasonably rapid speed. I want to welcome you to the California Citizens Redistricting Committee. This session has been set up so that we could take full advantage of the work that's been done by groups who have really looked into redistricting, and we look forward to the advice and counsel that they could provide us. In the spirit of trying to catch up with the time, I'm going to ask each of the commissioners just to give us their names so everybody know who you are, and we'll avoid the introductions so we pick up a little bit of time. So, Peter, do you want to start?
I'm Peter Yao. I'm from...
Never mind.
Just yell it out.
Sorry. My name is Peter Yao. I'm from the city of Claremont, retired engineer. Been with the Claremont City Council for a couple terms. Love to be here today. Thank you.
He wasn't paying attention.
I know, he never does.
I'm Stan Forbes. I'm from Yolo County.
I'm Cynthia Dime from San Francisco.
I'm Connie Galambos-Malloy from Oakland, California.
Hello, Mike Ward from Fullerton, California.
Hi, Jody Filkins from Norco, California.
Maria Blanco from Los Angeles, California.
My name is Gabino Aguirre. I'm from Ventura, California.
I'm Andre Parvenu from Los Angeles and Culver City.
I'm Jean Raya. I'm from the city of San Gabriel.
Hi, Angelo Anchetta from San Francisco.
Morning, everybody. I'm Gil Ontai from San Diego. Welcome.
And my name is Vince Baraba. I'm the chair of this meeting. We have a policy within the commission of having rotating chairs, and that way we keep the thing as nonpartisan as we possibly can and as open and transparent as we can. And the vice chair for this meeting is Connie Galambos-Malloy, who will be making sure that I stay on time, sometimes referred to as the hammer. Okay. This is a particularly interesting meeting for me because it was kind of startling when I realized it was commencement day here at Northridge, because it was my commencement day something like 50 years ago. This was quite a different place, and I really have been impressed with what the university has done. To welcome us here to the university, we have Vance Peterson, who is the Vice President of University Advancement, which in some ways is everything else that goes on in the campus.
Welcome to you all. We're delighted to have you here at California State University Northridge. Pardon me. Welcome to you all. We're delighted to have you here on this campus for this very, very important meeting that you're having. We're very pleased to be able to host it. The Valley is a very important part of Los Angeles. The lines are drawn interestingly in the Valley, and we think your work is extremely important, not only to this region, but obviously to the entire state. So welcome, and we wish you well in your deliberations over the next few days. It may have been not obvious as you had that nice quiet walk through the orange grove here this morning that we are a campus of some 40,000 people, 35,000 students, 5,000 faculty and staff. We're actually one of the 50 largest universities in the United States, and one of the up-and-coming and increasingly top-tier comprehensive universities in the country. We rank in the top 5, for example, by the National Science Foundation in the number of our alumni, a number of our graduates who go on to achieve the research doctorates in science. So we're very proud of the work we do here, and we'd like to have you come back anytime and feel very welcome on this campus. This room is just one part of a 160,000 square foot complex that's brand new here on this campus, the Valley Performing Arts Center, which for the first time in the history of this region brings the performing arts to the Valley to the Four Valley region surrounding this area of some 3 million people. So people who had a struggle getting downtown to the Los Angeles Music Center in the past because of the traffic issues in Los Angeles no longer have those struggles. They can come here, and we had our first half season, which will be winding up very, very soon this next weekend. So do come back, and we'd love to show you the rest of the complex if you have time. We're very proud of our alumni. We are adding another 10,000 alumni this week to increase our total number of alumni to over 200,000. We're very proud of Vince as one of our most distinguished alumni, as we are of Mike Kerb, for whom the College of Arts, Media, and Communications is named, the former Lieutenant Governor of California, of course, and founder of Kerb Records. Bill Griffith of CNBC, and Governor Linda Lingle, former Governor Linda Lingle, who was termed out this year, Governor of Hawaii. So welcome again. We are very delighted to have you with us and this important part of our democratic process.
President Kester is at the commencement ceremony, and if she has time, she'll join us a little later in around lunchtime. Okay, so let's get started, and we'll start off with the Inland Empire American Redistricting Coalition, better known as IEAARC. Excuse me. Yeah. Oh, and let me explain the timing rules. Each group is allowed 20 minutes for a set of for a map. So, like assembly districts, you're allowed 15, and then and if you have a assembly, that's 15. If it's Senate, it's 15. If it's congressional, it's 15. And then we, as a commission, allowed ourselves 10 minutes to ask questions, and we would ask that the respondents of the questions try to limit their answers to 2 minutes, because otherwise we start running out of time. Any other questions from the commissioners? All right, so let's start, sir. If you would,
Great. Good morning. I'm Walter Hawkins from the Inland Empire African American Redistricting Coalition, and thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today and provide our maps that we are suggesting. I represent the West Side Action Group. We're part of the coalition, and today we're going to talk about why we feel there should be as many maps, districts within San Bernardino County as possible. San Bernardino County is one of the largest growing areas in the state, along with Riverside County. And as a result of the growth of the state, our area has experienced tremendous growth within the county as well as within Riverside. What we're suggesting is that, again, the maps for this district be as complete in the county as possible. Because of the distribution of the population in the southwest corner, it's impossible to make everything precise without going across county lines. So we will be suggesting minimum work with other areas, specifically Claremont and the Riverside County communities of Calamasa through the pass of Banning and Beaumont, and also the Pomona City area, which will be affiliated with Montclair. So from the African American perspective, this is one of the key districts that we feel throughout the state of California. Currently, the targeted districts that we're showing are a part of what we call the Ebony Triangle. The reason I try to point that out to you is for your map makers and for yourselves, is the African American population is about 180,000 in San Bernardino County. It is the second largest K-12 population next to LA County in terms of public schools. Within the county, though, what's important to note is there are two significant areas where we feel the community should stay together. One is an area known as the Victor Valley, and that's in the high desert, and that'll include the cities of Victorville, Adelanto, Apple Valley, and Hesperia. especially Victorville. Victorville has about a 17% African American population out of over 150,000. The second area, which is the larger area, is what's shown on the map now. And the Ebony Triangle, as I've mentioned before, is it would be a buffer of about a mile around the three freeways, the 15, the 10, and the 215. Within those areas, historically, you have had about between 31 and 35% of the African American population in San Bernardino County lives within those areas. Significantly, this past 10 years, the growth has been on the west end. So the African American population in the cities of Rancho Cucamonga, Upland, and those areas has increased tremendously and is higher than the percentage of the county as a whole. So we feel that those districts, those communities should stay together because not only do they share economic interests, community interests, social interests, and they also attend the same school districts. The Assembly District, this is the Assembly District that we feel should be drawn. We call it District 1, but for your familiarity, it would be the 62nd Assembly District today. That district has grown tremendously, and what we're suggesting is, I don't know throughout the state if there's any more natural district than this one. When we look at all the numbers for this district, and I'll show the numbers or talk about it, this particular aggregation of Rialto, San Bernardino, Colton, Grand Terrace, Bloomington, Muscoy, and the unincorporated areas within there, and then a portion of Fontana, which extends from Rialto to the street of Palmetto, that is only 26 people over the target population. We feel it's very important now that that district include all of those cities. The current district was drawn and it cut San Bernardino in half. It went out and went down below the freeway in Fontana. So we feel it's important as well for Fontana to have a complete district as it is for those cities. So again, that's our target district that we feel is the most critical in San Bernardino County. It is also the only district that has been 100% within the county. Okay, the next districts, District 1 is still there, but we feel that District 2 is a district that can be drawn on the west end, and that would include Rancho Cucamonga, goes up all the way up to the Wrightwood area, and across the border in L.A. County, that would be the Claremont area. Some people say, why Claremont? Well, those of you who are from this area realize that there is a strong affinity in terms of similarities between Claremont and Upland. Many of the folks who live in Upland go to Claremont, vice versa. Professionally and demographically, they're both high-income communities. And just as an aside, I worked 34 years as administrator at Cal State San Bernardino University, and many of my colleagues live in Upland and in the Claremont area. So again, there's a relationship in terms of working with San Bernardino. The District 3 would be the district that would be somewhat akin to 61 and that it exists now, and that is the extending from Pomona, and then it goes all the way to South Fontana, with an area known as the Southridge area of Fontana, and that's the area of the city that's below the 10. So in other words, we tried to keep Fontana as completely a whole as we could, but because of the size of the city and the other communities, there's no way that Fontana can be in a district completely by itself. Thank you. Okay, next we have what we're calling District 4, and this district is one that we feel is going to solve the problem that currently exists with Assembly District 63. Assembly District 63 last time took the community of Grand Terrace, and then it jumped to what's called Retchie Canyon, which is part of Colton, and then went around the city of San Bernardino and down to Rancho Cucamonga and those areas on the west end. It was not a very good district. It looks like almost like an upside-down horseshoe. So we feel, in working with our constituents and with the mountain community people, and there was a young lady from the mountains who did testify in Norco, their feeling is that they don't want to be split again this time as well. And so they feel a community with the mountains and the East Valley, which includes Yucaipa, Redlands, and those areas, Calamasa down to the pass, would be a good district. The 65th Assembly District in the past did go through a Moreno Valley. We feel that it doesn't need to extend that far. So at this time, again, Calamasa, why is Calamasa important? Yucaipa, Calamasa make up a school district. So there's a relationship there within the communities already. So what we've done is we've extended a little bit to the past. So now it would include, instead of Moreno Valley, it would include Cherry Valley, Beaumont, and Banning. And so those are the communities. And they share the transportation corridor of the 10 as well as other relationships because of past historical relationships. So we feel that would be a solid district to consider. Finally, within the county, because of the geography, many of you know that Inyo and Mano counties are closer related to the high desert in terms of access. The 395 is a link from San Bernardino County all the way up to Mano County. We also feel that it's important because in the past that district extended down through San Bernardino down to LA County, but it really was a bad district in terms of the way it was drawn. Because, again, of the size, the most important aspect of this is we feel that the high desert communities of the Victor Valley should be together. So all of those areas in blue near the bottom of that are Apple Valley, Hesperia, Victorville, and Adelanto, along with Mountain Acres, a couple of other communities, Pinion Hills, Oak Hills, those communities. So in other words, if you know your geography, it's basically district would be above the Cajon Pass, from the summit of the Cajon Pass all the way to Inyo Mano, and then it would go into the Lancaster area, but not, it's Lake Los Angeles, but it stops near the boundaries of Palmdale and Lancaster. In the past, there's been a strong relationship in that area, but Palmdale and Lancaster have grown so much, there's no way that they can be linked with Victor Valley again to be an assembly district, especially since you have to include the 30-something thousand that live in the Inyo Mano area. So we feel that would be a strong district in terms of relationships, compactness, and other factors in terms of the geography. Of course, we suggested that districts be nested. So the districts that we show, which was 2 and 3, would be District 1, and then 1 and 4 would be a Senate district. So that's the way we nested those districts. Congressional districts. What we have on the map here is in District 1, which is where you see the 10 and the 15. That's, again, the cities of San Bernardino, Rialto, Colton, Bloomington, Grand Terrace, Muscoy, and also Bloomington. And then it extends to Ontario. The current district, as it is drawn, has all of Ontario in there. The reason it has to be split is because right now the district has too many people because of population growth. So we feel that in terms of the boundaries, that would be Mission up to Grove. That includes the Ontario Airport, and the other side of the district includes the old Norton Air Force Base. So in terms of someone from our area working with the transportation, as you know, logistics, transportation, the use of the reuse of air bases has been a big thing in the San Bernardino County area. So this district would take advantage of that in terms of those relationships. And as I mentioned, Ontario and that district were already linked in the past district, so this is not a new relationship that's being suggested. The next part, the reason I had to draw that, as you know, San Bernardino is 20,000 miles, so it's hard to show the county in one map. Usually we have to split it up and show the valley area below the Cajon Pass and then the desert area blown up. This map of another congressional district would be basically, again, the East Valley area, the mountains, and going all the way up to I-40, and then over to Needles, and on the bottom of the southeast part, that's Big River, Blue Water, those little communities on the river. The thing that we feel is important as well is the, let me maybe back up here, oops. On the west side there, we're suggesting another congressional district that can be drawn on the west end that would allow the county to be better represented. So this district would then include Montclair, Claremont together with the west end communities, and would go up to the base of Wrightwood, include that area, and the freeway, the 15 freeway. And I wanted to allow for time for questions. So that's our overall presentation. I'll be glad to respond to questions or any other things you have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you.
Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Aguirre.
Just some suggestions to help us with analyzing your maps. Thank you for all the great work you've done, especially in this area, being that it's a very high growth area. But the maps were hard to conceptualize for me because there's no cities indicated in those areas. You have highways, but in terms of cities, although you gave us a running list of what each one of those districts included, it'd be good to overlay the cities if you could update those. And then the other question relates to the total number of residents or the census numbers for each one of your proposed districts, so that we could evaluate whether they're meeting that criteria.
Yes,
So.
I have those numbers. I didn't want to take the time in detail, but we've submitted to you the report that has the districts broken down, each of the communities, and why they should be together.
Okay.
And just to respond to you, I agree with you in terms of trying to present, but as I mentioned, the reason we don't, because when we put the cities on there and try to show it, it hides the city because of the way San Bernardino is so big.
Yeah.
So in the other maps we've drawn, and we've indicated the cities, but we do have them in the report. And we have all the numbers, and pretty much all of the districts that we've drawn. As I mentioned, the first district, Assembly District, is 1/100th over in terms of deviation. It's 26 people over. The other districts basically vary between 1.2% below as much and then 4%. So they're all within a tolerance of less than 5%.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I apologize for...
No problem. I appreciate it.
The other question relates to any splits in any cities that are within your districts. I'm not sure how many cities you split, if there were any splits in cities.
Yes, the basics I mentioned is Fontana and Ontario were split in terms of the districts we drew. The other ones we tried to keep together. That was the challenge that we faced, but we felt it could be done. And so, but again, the reason that West End has to be split some is because the growth is so tremendous. So that's why we can create 2 new districts in that West End. So only Ontario, Fontana, pretty much were the basic parts that were split, and part of Fontana, and a very small part of Fontana. It only out of the 199,000, it only ends up being about 70,000 people max in Fontana that are outside of their city.
Okay. Commissioner Filkins-Weber.
Were you intending on submitting any supplemental information that would explain where you crossed
Yes,
county
we do.
lines?
We have submitted that. We have a PDF file a report that explains all of those. It has tables in it, so that has been submitted. So it has all the tables for each of the districts, again with the cities, with their ethnic distribution and the voting age population. That's all in the table. So for each district, there's a table that gives the numbers, and then it lists all the communities that are involved in that district.
And does it provide additional information regarding your assessment of the communities of interest?
Yes.
Thank you.
A quick question of the staff. Do we have this report here to hand out?
We have the 3 files that...
But just single copies or multiple copies?
Hard copy. We don't have any hard
Okay, all right. Thank you. Commissioner Raya.
Just following up on Commissioner Filkins' question about your assessment of the communities of interest, can you give us an idea of the outreach that you did within your community, or how you gathered a sense of the communities of interest?
Sure, no problem. Well, our group has been working since 2000 on different areas. Myself, I'm a demographer, and I do this work in the community. Part of my job with the university as the director of research and policy analysis for 34 years. These are the things that I do for the CSU system in terms of our region, because that's our service area. In working with other groups, we had partners of nonprofits, we had community citizens, we had open meetings. The reason I mentioned the West Side Action Group is that we are probably the only group in the country of African-American males that has had continuous community forums since about 1972. So on every Monday, we have a community forum, and a large part of our meetings has been the discussion of redistricting, reaching out. We also work with Erica's group, as she came down to the area. The Greenlining group came down, and we worked with all of those. So a lot of our community has attended several meetings that were brought to the community for outreach, and we participated in those along with those members. And during and after those meetings, we would collect information, share our thoughts about the different lines that were drawn, and get feedback. And especially, I think the one that's most significant, because the young lady did come and testify, is we specifically wanted to make sure that we got a good rationale for the mountain communities. So that is on the record from Norco about why the mountain communities should be included. Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Yao.
On one of the Senate districts, most of it is in San Bernardino County, but you did protrude into Riverside County as well as Los Angeles County. What priority do you give to the county lines? Do you feel that it's probably the one that would give in terms of having the right population and the right mix?
Those districts, that especially on the west end, that across the county lines, as you've heard from prior testimony, the Pomona-Montclair area has a long history in terms of being united in one district. And so we maintain that relationship in one of those districts. And then the newer area in terms of formerly being it's been in our community in terms of congressional districts, and that's Claremont and those areas. But in terms of the Riverside area, those communities have been involved with San Bernardino County for quite a while. It's a natural thing because, again, Calamasa, Yucaipa, the school districts, and many of the activities in terms of that community on I-10 corridor are a natural relationship. So that's why you'll see that minimum crossing of lines, but it is a relationship that has been ongoing, and so we maintain that relationship.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Parvenu.
I too appreciate the work that you put into this. I know it's a challenging task. You mentioned that in your maps, your deviations range from 1% to up to 4%. I'm curious to know why that one of your maps extended up as high as 4%. What was your reason for that? Because
of the growth of the area, you'll notice when you look at our document, we put in those two areas that are over or a little bit short. Those are conceptual drawings. So what we did is we put those in as suggested districts because of the way the population is. And in other words, those are districts that can kind of go different ways, but we felt from our communities and listening that this would be the best basic core of those districts. So that's why we wanted to present you with the information. We could have drawn them and got them 100%, but we felt that we didn't have any strong feelings in terms of being able to say this is how it has to be. So we wanted to just give you something to say these are our conceptual maps for these areas and give you a basic understanding. But again, we know that they could change.
Commissioner, we're going to be running out of time here pretty soon.
Just want to know if materials will be presented in graphic color copy format.
Yes, sir. We submitted them as we were asked to do, so we turned them in. They've been sent in electronically in a PDF file.
Commissioner Antai.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Mr. Hawkins. Let
Yes,
me
sir.
ask you, most of your boundaries show San Bernardino County. You didn't go into Riverside. Did your group ever look at that side as well?
Yes, we do. As I mentioned in one of the districts, it does go into Riverside right there in District 2. That goes into Riverside. That's part of the Senate groups, but in more detail. Right there is, that does have a depiction with the communities on there. So the light green are actually, as was mentioned, the cities. So in the bottom of that graphic of that District 4, that is Riverside County, and those are the communities of Calamasa, Banning, Cherry Valley, and Beaumont.
And that's the extent of the African American community?
Well, it's surprising for some people. There is a significant African American population in the Beaumont Banning area, and that's been historical even in Palm Springs. If you go back to the migration in the 30s, many African Americans moved to California, stopped along the way in Riverside County. And so, of course, many of those folks end up being domestics in the Palm Springs area. But there was a contingent because of railroad and other things that lived in the Banning area. So there's a significant African American population. But we didn't draw these maps only for the African American population. We drew them because this was the best way to have one person, one vote. But we do have communities that have a relationship because in that particular area, Calamasa, Yucaipa are school districts. So there's been a relationship within San Bernardino County and Riverside County because of that school district.
Thank you. That explains it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Okay.
Hawkins.
Thank you
We
for your time.
appreciate
And
the effort
again,
you
if
put in.
there's anything else that we need to do, we'll be glad to provide that for you.
Thank you.
May I ask staff a question on the presentation material? There's a presentation 1 and presentation 2. What are the differences between those two PDF files?
From my understanding, Mr. Hawkins submitted 3 files, and I haven't had an opportunity to go through them, so we posted the 3 files that he provided.
Okay.
My understanding, are they just different versions of the same file?
No, what we did is we presented 2 PowerPoints because we didn't know which software you used. Please repeat that. We submitted, excuse me, we presented 3 files. 2 of them represent the PowerPoint because we weren't sure if you had 7 or 10 in terms of that. But the other report, the other document is the report that highlights the narrative that explains the boundaries, has the tables, it gives some of the justification, and has the numbers in that. So that's in the PDF file.
Thank you. Commissioner Columbus Malloy.
I just wanted to revisit the guidelines on the statewide presentations for those of you who may be here and presenting later in the day. We had requested, in addition to the actual presentation, 16 hard copies of the presentation and any supporting materials. Clearly, not everyone has met that requirement. We found that to be the case on Tuesday. We're finding it to be the case again today. Our technical consultants, Q2, are watching this on the live stream and inputting data, so we'll be able to provide some summary as we move into line drawing, but we've found that it dramatically enhances the ability of the commissioners to be able to analyze the materials and ask thoughtful questions if we can have the hard copies before the presenters actually move into their presentations. So thank you for keeping that in mind.
All right. The next would be the citizens for the San Gabriel Mountains. You can go around here.
My name is Juana Torres, and I'm here as a representative of Citizens for the San Gabriel Mountains. And I wanted to just give you a quick context to this amazing resource to Los Angeles County, perhaps our most important natural resource. And so if you see here on the screen, the dark green area is the San Gabriel Mountains. The San Gabriel Mountains are in the Angeles National Forest and in the western section of the San Bernardino National Forest. The Angeles is also split into 2 sections. So there's the dark green area, and then on the other side of the 5 is the second section of the forest. These mountains constitute 70% of the open space in Los Angeles County, and 90% of the visitors come from the communities to the south of the forest. So that includes, almost the entire San Gabriel Valley, San Fernando Valley, and really the southern part of Los Angeles County. The county also receives a third of its drinking water from the San Gabriel Mountains. So they're incredibly important and an incredibly beautiful place. And despite their significance and their importance as a natural resource, For the most part, in the past, when congressional districts have been drawn, and our presentation today will be focused on federal congressional districts, when these districts have been drawn, the San Gabriel Mountains are really ignored and kind of left out of the equation. They have very few people living in them, so they're kind of just given a second thought when putting them into districts. And so today we'd like to, our group would like to present to you a different vision on how to incorporate these public lands and how to connect these public lands to the people who use them. So connecting the main point really of our presentation will be to connect the users, the 90% of the folks who use the mountains and the downstream communities to their public lands. I'd like to make the case for these users being a community of interest. As a community of interest, so all of the communities from the Sylmar area, which is kind of right along with where the 5 and the 210 meet, 50 miles east to the Claremont area, we consider that a community of interest. And we understand that that's a very large community of interest, and you can't put all those people in one district. So we will give recommendations on how to build 3 congressional districts. But we do want you to consider all of the users a community of interest. All of these communities are within 15 miles of one of the 3 major highway entrances to the San Gabriel Mountains from the 210. And so those, that would be the Highway 39 and Angeles Crest Highway and the Mount Baldy Road over by Claremont. So those are kind of the 3 main entrances to the San Gabriel Mountains, and it's really where a majority of the people enter the mountains. And so these communities are within most of these communities are within 15 miles of these 3 major entrances. These communities share a common geographic orientation to the mountains and historic, social, and economic interests with each other, including tourism. Foothill and watershed communities share many common concerns about the management of their federal public lands, such as fire and fuels management. It's just, if you from this area, you know that fire management fires are a huge issue for us down here, and these communities share that interest in making sure that their voice is heard in how fire management is done. Drinking water quality is another characteristic that these communities share, and the watershed protection, as well as the quality of the recreation that they have available. And so all of these communities, if they were to be connected to the San Gabriel Mountains, they would have a say in how all of these various issues that I just mentioned are managed. So, for example, if we connect the people from, let's say, the community of El Monte who use the mountains, if we were to connect them to the public lands, then they would have direct access to their congressional representative to be able to tell the congressional representative, look, when we're up in the mountains, there's no services for us. There's no rangers that speak the language. There's no trails. There's a lack of whatever it may be. And the congressional representatives, federal congressional representatives, because these are federal public lands, have a huge say then in how the lands are managed. So they have the influence over the Forest Service, who's the managing agency. And I'm going to ask my colleague to come up to kind of build that case a little bit more for the shortage of recreational needs, and then give the map the boundary suggestions to you.
Thank you, Juana, and thank you to the Commission for allowing us a little bit of time here to make our case. My name is Byron Ramos-Gudiel, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples, a few examples actually, of some of what my colleague Juana was talking to you all about a little bit earlier. So if you look at this disconnection that Juana sort of alluded to or described a little bit earlier, it wasn't always like this. About a decade ago is when this disconnect happened through some gerrymandering of the districts that I'll describe in a little bit. And then what this gerrymandering did, it created some negative consequences and some inequities in some of the downstream and gateway communities that Juana described a minute ago, and I will go into a little bit more detail. And given the fact that a lot of the visitors to the San Gabriel Mountains and those regions are predominantly Latino, predominantly API or Asian Pacific Islander, and they also, when they do visit the region, right, they are faced with inadequate services, lack of security as well, lack of adequate signage, improper trail maintenance, and those sort of things, inadequate garbage collection, unsafe. If any of you've been to any of the river spaces, you'll realize that there's a lack of safe access to the actual river, and the river is actually like a highlight and a big draw for residents in the downstream communities and Azusa to that region. and so there's this sort of inequity that is perpetuated by the diminished voice of the San Gabriel residents or San Gabriel watershed residents have to the forest management and resource allocation. And I know that Juana talked about that a little bit. Is that so? These residents go up to the watershed or to the recreation area with their families throughout the summer and the spring, and they find that conditions are really not safe, and they have no voice, right, in how those resources are allocated, so that there is proper management of the forest in a way that provides safe and healthy recreation opportunities for these families. If you look north, if you're in Azusa, for instance, right, and if you look north, Azusa is the gateway city to the Angela National Forest along Highway 39. It will enjoy views of dramatic main canyon of the San Gabriel River, and that river would really, like I said, attracts a lot of the residents from Azusa for recreation. But then you will also be looking, if you're in Azusa, you're looking at a completely different congressional district, right? And although it's part of your landscape, right, on an everyday basis, it's part of your recreation opportunities and activities, you don't have a say. You don't have folks in Azusa do not have a say in the way that forest is managed. And so if you move down the river and the watershed, right, you'll find communities that heavily populate throughout the summer and in other parts of the year, heavily populate the San Gabriel River and all the other recreational spots along the way. And those residents are mostly park poor. We're talking about residents from El Monte, from Baldwin Park, Azusa, Irwindale. All these visitors are mostly Latino, mostly API folks, and they come from cities that lack adequate and sufficient park space, open space, healthy recreation opportunities, and all of these cities suffer from high youth obesity rates, and we connect that to the obvious lack of healthy recreational opportunities. And so these mountains represent that for these communities, and that's why these folks tend to use this whole area as the recreation opportunity of choice. I'm going to move here along. And so the second example that I want to use is Pasadena. So Pasadena is very similar to Azusa, right? You look north, and there's a historic connection to that region. And the issues of that region, of the San Gabriel Mountains, really affect and are important to Pasadena. Fire management and these sort of things, right? Resource allocation. And however, the residents of Pasadena, like the residents of Azusa and the downstream communities, have no access to how that region is managed. And so we are making the case, and my colleague John will jump in here in a second, that our concern, at the very least, our concern is not necessarily the precise composition cities in the congressional district, but the inclusion of major sections of the Angeles National Forest in the districts that include Pasadena, Altadena, La Cañada, Glendale. So, and for this particular example, so I'm going to rush off this mic and let my colleague John talk to you a little bit about the specifics and the map drawing.
Since time is getting short, I'll just thank the Commission and dive in here. My name is John Munson, And basically, what we have is from Sylmar to Claremont is what we have running along the southern border of the Angeles National Forest are 22 cities, which we think are a community of interest. We're recommending something really simple to the Commission, which is that that the Angeles National Forest, which they have an interest in, be in the same districts as the 22 communities that are the community of interest. So as you create districts, link, for instance, Pasadena, which has that historic tie to the Angeles National Forest, in the same congressional district. So whatever congressional districts Pasadena is in, extend it north to include some logical parts of the San Gabriel Mountains, which I'll mention in a minute. We wanted to recommend two general principles to the Commission, and then I'll give some specific ideas. First, the 22 foothill and watershed communities we have identified should be grouped together in the smallest number of congressional districts possible. As a practical matter, given the long southern flank of the Angeles National Forest and the large population of the foothill and watershed communities, 3 congressional districts is a reasonable target. Second, these 3 congressional districts should extend from the foothill and watershed communities north across the San Gabriel Range to at least the northern border of the Angeles National Forest as it reaches the Mojave Desert. Our basic strategy in congressional district design is to divide our community of interest into 3 segments, logically connect those segments to the Angeles National Forest, and fill in the districts with cities to the south of the community of interest. Let me give you examples of how that might look in terms of design. This is what we call the Azusa District. Our recommendation is the cities located along the San Gabriel River, just to south of the Angeles National Forest, again along the San Gabriel River, form the core of a congressional district that includes the San Gabriel watershed and the Angeles National Forest. 4 cities in the district, which are part of our community of interest, would include Azusa, Irwindale, Baldwin Park, El Monte, and South El Monte. These cities have easy highway access to the San Gabriel Canyon Road, the major gateway to the San Gabriel River watershed. And to fill out the district, we would add other cities in our community of interest to the east and west, Duarte, Glendora, San Dimas, and Claremont. And north of those cities is on the right, defined by that blue line, is really the San Gabriel River watershed. So we're saying connect those communities above Glendora and those areas with the watershed to the north where people recreate. And since there are very few voters in the Angeles National Forest, we think it might be something that's relatively easy for the Commission to do. Let me give an example of second district design, the Pasadena area to the west, which would include Pasadena, Glendale, Altadena, and La Cañada. And those communities have historic ties, and residents from those areas enter the forest through the Angeles Crest Highway. So what we're essentially saying is create a district with those communities, and perhaps Burbank and other communities that would logically go with that. And then in the forest above Altadena and La Cañada, you'll see the second district, which really extends up through the Angeles National Forest to across where you'd access the forest from the Angeles Crest Highway. So you're linking, again, the people to the south that are heavy users and have a heavy interest in the management of the forest, and extending the congressional district they're in across the forest to include those federal public lands where they should have a voice. Third district, and I'm running out of time, would be the remaining cities of our community of interest. That would be Sylmar to, take 30 seconds here, to Tujunga. And it would link that with Santa Clarita, the East San Fernando Valley, with the remaining sections of the forest to the north. And really visitorship is from south to north, like Lancaster and Palmdale, which you could certainly include in that district, have very little visitorship to the forest.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. We'll
Thank you.
get to the questions now. Commissioners. Commissioner Yao.
As we form the district, either from the east to the west or from the west to the east, whenever we come across a situation where we have to make the number right, it's okay for it's okay for us to split cities in that circumstances to make up the proper size for the assembly district or the congressional district?
Yeah, we've identified 22 communities of interest which have a population larger than a congressional district. And so, we're really focused on the north-south relationship. So we wouldn't have a problem with cities being divided, although certainly cities like Pasadena, Glendale themselves would probably have an objection to being divided.
Thank you.
Commissioner Filkins-Weber.
Do you have any opinion as to how far north you go into the mountains, given that there isn't any real population up there? So, I mean,
Sure.
I saw on your one map you have the blue that goes around, but do you have any opinion as to, how high do we go? Do we not extend on the backside, because maybe people on the backside of the mountains might have an interest on that side? Do you have any opinion on that?
Absolutely. So on the north side of the mountain, you could take little cities like Juniper Hills. You could take bigger places like Palmdale or Lancaster. The Forest Service does, I should say as background, does a survey of users by zip code. So there's a great tool, which I can give you the link to, that shows where the visitors come from. It's really quite informative. It's intuitive in a sense that, of course, all the communities along the forest have heavy visitorship, and the people that are nearest the access routes have visitorship. Santa Clarita has a relatively small visitorship, probably 1% of the visitors of the forest. Lancaster, 1%. Palmdale, 1%. So we would say first start with the other 97% that come from the south and extend the districts across north all the way to the northern border of the Angeles National Forest. If you want to continue to include Palmdale and other communities, that would be great. It's just they are, the tail of the dog, not the dog. The main thing is that, to me, it's pardon that, anyone from Palmdale. It's crazy that Pasadena isn't in the same congressional district as where you hike out of Pasadena into the public lands. I don't think there's really an argument about that. But our congressional district north of Pasadena really follows in the Angeles National Forest all the area you would reach using the Angeles Crest Highway. So it's really logical to do it that way by recreational area. So we would include the entire forest design south to north, and if you want to go further, that would be great.
Will you provide staff the link for that user
Yes,
zip code information?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, sir, thank you. Thank you
all very much.
And by the way, I think it's been very interesting, but I think you're going to cause a little challenge for compactness first, but we can handle that later.
Thank you.
Big districts. All right. So, Gepfer. Is Gepfer next? No. Okay. Both district maps that take 30 minutes, and then we'll have 20 minutes for questions. And I want to just comment that we really appreciate the homework you provided us several days ago.
We're sorry you have to lug that around.
30 minutes, yes.
Thank you. My name is Danny Chinose, and I direct the demographic research project at the Asian Pacific American Legal Center in Los Angeles, also referred to as APALC. This is my colleague Joanna Lee, research analyst in our demographic research project. As you all know, the Legal Center is the statewide anchor for CAPAFER, the Coalition of Asian Pacific Americans for Fair Redistricting. We're here to present CAPAFER's proposed statewide plan for California Assembly and regional plan for California Senate. Okay, CAPAFER is a nonpartisan coalition whose goal is to strengthen the voice of Asian American and Pacific Islander communities in California's statewide redistricting process. The coalition is structured as a network of 10 regional coalitions, with CAPAFER serving as its anchor. Okay. Coalitions are active in Sacramento, San Francisco, San Mateo, Alameda, Santa Clara, Fresno, LA Metro, LA San Gabriel Valley, LA South Bay, Orange, and San Diego counties. CAPAFER has been working for a year to involve Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in the redistricting process. To do this, we held 4 meetings in each of these 10 regions. In the first meeting, we educated diverse community members about the redistricting process and how it affects them. In the second, we guided community members through exercises to identify their communities of interest, social and economic characteristics that define their communities and the work they do to address problems their communities face. After collecting data to capture those communities of interest, again, these data are drawn mostly from the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey 5-year estimates, but we did rely on other data. We met a third time to evaluate different district configurations those communities of interest data might suggest. Here we began the process of integrating communities of interest priorities expressed at the regional level into statewide or regional mapping approaches based on traditional redistricting principles, including population equality, compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act, contiguity, maintain the integrity of cities, counties, neighborhoods, and communities of interest, compactness, and nesting. This included discussions with key stakeholders outside of our community and reviewing testimony presented to this commission about parts of the state in which we had no regional coalition. So that testimony was obviously really important. Finally, after arriving at lines that considered all of these factors, the coalition voted to approve final district configurations. Okay, so through this lengthy process, CAPAFER developed a statewide plan for the California State Assembly and 10 regional plans for the California State Senate. We'll be presenting these plans to you in each of the 10 regions in which our coalitions were active from north to south, discussing both Assembly and Senate proposals as we move through each region. Okay, so let's start with Sacramento. Our coalition in the state's capital looked at a host of factors, including per capita income, employment rates, and the characteristics of local schools and drawing districts. These data suggest social and economic similarities between areas around the southern part of Sacramento, which are home to large numbers of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. Because these data showed similarities between parts of the city of Sacramento and immediately adjacent areas, the larger Sacramento metropolitan area was divided into 3 communities of interest, defined by general measures of socioeconomic status. So here, on the map before you, per capita income divides the area into a lower income, Assembly District 7, including southern Sacramento, Elk Grove, and Vineyard, a moderate to high income Assembly District 6, running east to west, including central Sacramento, Arden Arcade, and Rancho Cordova, and a lower income, again, Assembly District 5, including northern Sacramento, North Highlands, and Citrus Heights. There are other cities which are included in the information in our binder. Note here that 86 crosses the Yolo County line to include West Sacramento, given its similarities to the more urban parts of Sacramento. Okay, on the Senate side, our coalition drew a single district, Senate District 5, which contains the entire city of Sacramento and surrounding communities, including Elk Grove, Arden Arcade, and Rio Linda. While assembly districts here proved too small to draw together the city of Sacramento and adjacent areas with which it has strong social and economic ties, more generous Senate district population size allowed these communities with shared interests to be drawn together in a single district. Okay, the city of Sacramento is whole here in SD5. Okay, moving on to San Francisco. Our SF coalition recognized an east-west divide within the city and drew districts to reflect that divide. Okay. On the east side, they recognized the shared interests of low-income immigrant communities in Chinatown, the Mission, and Excelsior Visitation Valley by keeping them whole in Assembly District 13. And again, when I refer to Assembly Districts, we're referring to our proposed districts. In drawing that community of interest together, they worked to avoid the division of another community of interest defined by the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender community, or LGBT, in Castro, Twin Peaks, Noe Valley, and the Mission by including that community whole in the 8013. On the west side, they maintained the integrity of Chinese American communities in Richmond and Sunset, and Filipino American communities in Daly City and South San Francisco. Okay. Because Daly City is currently divided by assembly districts, it was particularly important to the coalition to unite that city. Here, district population deviations were pushed closer to 1%, above the ideal district population to unite as much of the Filipino American community in South San Francisco and Daly City, with Daly City in a single district. Okay, they recognized the same east-west divide when drawing Senate districts. On the west side, larger Senate districts allowed for the entire cities of Daly City and South San Francisco to be included whole in a single district. Assembly District 9 includes the western portion of San Francisco, Daly City, South San Francisco, and other San Mateo County cities, including San Bruno, San Mateo, and Foster City. On the east side, drawing Marin County together with the eastern portion of San Francisco brings together LGBT communities in San Francisco with services in LGBT-friendly communities in Marin County. Assembly District 8 to the north includes the eastern portion of San Francisco, all of Marin County, and as much of Sonoma County as could be included. Okay, across the bay, our Alameda County Coalition recognized that socioeconomic differences between residents lead to different interests in the region. Okay, in Oakland, the coalition felt that the interests of low-income residents in the Oakland Flats, here up in 17, would be better suited by drawing them in a district with other low-income populations in southern Berkeley, rather than with higher income parts in the Oakland Hills. And this is AD 17 on your map. This map of per capita income illustrates the socioeconomic divide and distinct communities of interest within the city of Oakland. Further south, Assembly District 19 keeps Union City, Hayward, and San Leandro whole and in the same district, uniting low to moderate income immigrant communities. And both districts maintain the integrity of African American and Asian American communities in the region. Okay, Senate districts here generally pair assembly districts with similar populations. To the north, Senate District 7 unites low-income communities in bay-adjacent areas. Okay, so drawing a seat that spans most of the coastal area of the East Bay from Oakland through Richmond and north to Vallejo. Crossing into Solano County allowed the coalition to bring together a community of interest based on income and prevent the division of African American communities in the region. Senate District 10 was drawn to avoid dividing Filipino American communities in Union City, Hayward, and San Leandro, keeping the Tri-Valley area of Dublin, Pleasanton, and Livermore together, and recognize the shared interests of higher income communities in the Oakland Hills and southern Contra Costa County. Okay, Santa Clara County is home to one of California's largest Asian American and Pacific Islander communities, with large numbers in Milpitas and the Berryessa neighborhood of San Jose to the north, and Mountain View, Sunnyvale, and Cupertino to the west. The Santa Clara Coalition is interested in maintaining the integrity of these two areas. Berryessa alone is currently divided into 4 different assembly districts. So I want to note that the coalition defines this Berryessa neighborhood as the intersection of San Jose City Council District 4 and the Berryessa Berryessa Union Elementary School District. And we were providing those 2 geographies to the Commission's Geographic Information System files to help you better recognize it. Okay, the Santa Clara Coalition drew districts that maintain the integrity of Asian American communities in Fremont, Milpitas, and Berryessa by including them together in Assembly District 20. To the west, Assembly District 22 brings together Mountain View, Sunnyvale, and Cupertino, with Santa Clara and Saratoga. To the east, Assembly District 24 maintains the integrity of the Little Saigon neighborhood and the Latino community in East San Jose. All three districts respect communities of interest defined by similar income levels and the presence of large immigrant communities. In Santa Clara County, all incorporated cities are kept whole, except obviously for the very large city of San Jose. Okay, the additional population in Senate districts allowed the coalition to respect larger communities of interest difficult to accommodate in assembly districts. In Senate District 11 to the north, the coalition used additional population to unite economically similar Asian American communities in Fremont, Milpitas, and Berryessa with Mountain View, Sunnyvale, and Cupertino. In Senate District 12, the coalition recognized the shared interests of San Jose and Santa Clara residents by unifying the southern portions of the city of San Jose and large portions of Santa Clara County in a single district. Okay, moving south once again. Our Fresno County coalition spent much of its time trying to figure out how to draw Fresno Voting Rights Act districts for Latinos that could include the economically similar Hmong American community. Okay. Proposed Assembly District 30 includes the Hmong refugee neighborhood, loosely bounded by Shields, First, Jensen, and Temperance whole, while maintaining a Latino citizen voting age population that makes up over 50% of the district's total citizen voting age population. It also recognizes it also connects farmland east and south of that Hmong community with the Hmong farmers who work the land there. Okay. On the Senate side, the coalition was also able to integrate the Hmong refugee community and their interests into a Section 5 Voting Rights Act covered district. Latinos make up over 50% of the citizen voting age population in Senate District 15. The Kings County-based district was also drawn to avoid retrogression under Section 5 by increasing the proportion of citizen voting age population that is Latino slightly from 51.7 under the existing lines to 51.8 under our proposed lines. A non-compact configuration, as you can see, may be necessary to avoid decreasing Latino voting strength in the district and comply with Section 5. I'm going to turn things over to my colleague Joanna, who will take us down to Los Angeles.
Right, moving down to Los Angeles and Southern California. In the city of Los Angeles, our LA Metro Coalition's priorities were preserving the integrity of the 5 Asian American neighborhoods. In our assembly plan, these neighborhoods are contained in 8048 and 8040 Assembly District 54, areas where 50% Latino CVAP districts could be drawn. Our coalition's first preference was to keep the 5 neighborhoods together in a district as they share common historic preservation, interests, as well as common communities of interest because they all have low-income immigrant residents. However, we had identified that multiple Latino CVAP districts could be drawn in this area. We drew these 2 districts to pair at least 2 Asian American neighborhoods together in each district instead of being separated into several districts. The boundary shape on the north side of 8048 is actually the southern boundary of Glendale on the 5 freeway. For Senate, our coalition nested these 2 districts to create a Latino CVAP district that unifies these Asian American neighborhoods, which share common social and economic characteristics such as per capita income. Moving to the LA San Gabriel Valley, our coalition's priority areas were portions of the East and West Valley that have a couple of the largest Asian American populations in the state. We drew 1 Asian American CVAP district, multiple Latino CVAP districts, and a community of interest district in this area. For the assembly, we are proposing an Asian CVAP district in the West San Gabriel Valley. The district is 50.17% Asian citizen voting age population. We will be submitting a report by Professor Matt Barreto from the University of Washington that documents evidence of racially polarized voting in this area. 8049, so we proposed unites disproportionately immigrant and limited English proficient communities in Alhambra, Monterey Park, Rosemead, San Gabriel, Arcadia, San Marino, Temple City, while also unifying Asian population in portions of South El Monte, and Montebello. Not only do the populations in the cities I just mentioned make up a 50% Asian CVAP district, they are also a solid community of interest. Many of the residents in these cities share similar social and economic characteristics, include being foreign-born, having limited English proficiency, and attending schools with similar academic performance index scores for schools. This is also true of the district that the coalition drew in the East San Gabriel Valley. There we drew 51 to include Hacienda Heights, Roland Heights, Walnut, and Diamond Bar, 4 cities with large Asian American residents. In addition to sharing similar socioeconomic characteristics, the district respects business interests around the economic corridor running along the 60 freeway, Valley Boulevard, and Colima Road. We've added adjacent hilly communities of Chino Hills and Yorba Linda that are in different counties but have similar characteristics to these areas. We've drawn 80, 49, and 51 while drawing adjacent Latino CVAP districts. For Senate, adjacent Latino CVAP districts affected the way the coalition drew districts in its priority areas. Senate District 23 in the west includes what we propose as 8049 and adjacent northern areas, unifying and keeping whole the foothill communities from La Crescenta to Sierra Madre. Senate District 32 in the east includes what we propose as 8051 and an Orange County Assembly District to the south. This was also not the first preference of our San Gabriel Valley Coalition. While the coalition preferred to be drawn with the western portions of the San Gabriel Valley, it wanted to respect Latino communities by drawing a Latino CVAP district to the west, north, east of that 8051. And that meant that they had to draw a district south. So, although in different counties, SD 32 residents in eastern San Gabriel Valley do share similar characteristics with Orange County residents, including per capita income. In the same county, we also had a coalition in the South Bay cities. The coalition wanted to respect the adjacent Latino and African American areas north of these cities in South LA while maintaining the integrity of South Bay communities of interest. For Assembly, our LA South Bay Coalition drew Latino CVAP seats in the north while respecting the integrity of African American and Asian American communities in this area. Based on the African American community testimony that we heard at the LA hearings, we drew districts based on communities of interest in South Los Angeles. We drew districts based on social and economic characteristics to keep together communities in South LA so that they can collectively advocate to common legislators who can address their issues. The plan also maintains the coastal communities of interest in the beach cities. 8060 keeps together our communities of interest and unites similar cities based on per capita income, percent foreign-born, and limited English proficiency. Although there were recommendations at the Long Beach hearing to pair Palos Verdes Peninsula with the beach cities, that would have required splitting Torrance and Gardena from Carson, which was not the first preference of our South Bay Coalition. You heard in community testimony that a Japanese American community of interest lives in Torrance and Gardena. You also heard testimony about the Asian American Pacific Islander communities in the city of Carson. These 3 cities share socioeconomic characteristics such as per capita income, percent foreign-born, and limited English proficiency. So in order to unite Gardena and Torrance with Carson and prevent Palos Verdes, a higher income area, from being united with lower income areas in Long Beach, we paired Palos Verdes with this area. We also kept Long Beach in Los Angeles County, which was the preference of Long Beach residents as heard in the public hearings. We kept the 2 Cambodian neighborhoods in Long Beach whole, but we felt we had to put them in 2 districts, 8061 and 8059, because we could draw a Latino CVAP district in North Long Beach. CAPA for South Bay drew Senate districts in this area with a similar philosophy. We drew several Latino CVAP districts in South LA. We kept the cities of Inglewood, Hawthorne, and Lenox together in a primarily African American district to keep together the Tongan community, which shares similar social and economic characteristics to other residents in this area. We nested 60 and 61 to create Senate District 29 to unite the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach and the communities that surround them. Because of the ports, these communities share environmental concerns and commercial interests. In Orange County, our coalition drew districts based on communities of interest criteria such as per capita income while respecting possible Latino voting rights interests in and around Santa Ana. For the Assembly, the Northern District 8063 unifies cities of Cerritos and Artesia and La Mirada in Los Angeles County with northern cities in Orange County based on similar social and economic characteristics such as per capita income, percent foreign born, limited English proficiency, and median academic performance index for schools. In addition, this unifies the Asian community that extends from Cerritos and Cypress up to Fullerton and Brea. We drew 8065 as a 50% Latino CVAP district in Santa Ana while respecting the integrity of Little Saigon and the Vietnamese community in Assembly District 64. Assembly District 64 keeps together the largest Vietnamese community outside of Vietnam. The communities in 8064 share similar socioeconomic characteristics, including per capita income, rates of limited English proficiency, and rates of foreign born. For Senate, we drew Orange County cities with East San Gabriel Valley in SD 32, as I explained before. We were able to unify limited English proficient communities in northern Orange County cities with East San Gabriel Valley cities. While the Orange County Coalition first preference was to be in an Orange County Senate district, they wanted to respect adjacent communities, similar to the other coalition. And in thinking more about this configuration, the coalition members realized that many business owners in Fullerton and the Buena Park area actually live in the East San Gabriel Valley and commute down the 57 freeway to their businesses, and that actually made sense to be drawn together. In Central Orange County, our communities felt that the immigrant communities in AD 64 shared similar characteristics and policy concerns as immigrants in AD 65, and therefore we nested AD 64 and 65 to create a Senate District 31. Moving down to our last county of focus, in San Diego, we drew districts based on common per capita income and limited English proficiency while drawing Latino CVAP districts in South County. For Assembly in South County, we drew the 50% Latino CVAP district while maintaining the integrity of adjacent communities of interest in AD 78. The shape of the Eastern Assembly District 77 border reflects the creation of a Latino CVAP district that also keeps African American population whole in adjacent Assembly District 78. The border also keeps Filipino and Lao populations in AD 78 together with community institutions that they rely on for social services and community ties. Northern County Assembly District 75 keeps together the university areas with La Jolla while keeping together middle-income immigrant communities in Mira Mesa, Rancho Penasquitos, and Sorrento Valley. This district is also a high-tech community of interest. San Diego Senate districts respect three distinct communities of interest: coastal communities, urban areas, and the inland rural areas. These Senate districts maintain the integrity of African American and Asian American communities while also drawing an adjacent Latino CVAP district in the South County. To conclude, I'd like to give you highlights of our Senate and Assembly plans. CAPIFER's plan respects the voting rights, respects communities of interest in neighborhoods, and respects other traditional redistricting criteria, such as contiguity, respect for cities and counties, and takes into account transportation corridors and natural topography. At all times, we follow the criteria set out in the Voters First Act. As required, we prioritize the factors. We had population equality and contiguity in mind at all times. We started by drawing potential Section 5 and Section 2 districts and then focused on respecting communities of interest, neighborhoods, counties, and cities. When drawing our maps, we also looked at compactness. And whenever the other factors allowed for it, we nested districts. All Assembly and Senate districts in our plan, including the 50% minority CVAP districts, are within 1% of the ideal deviation. Half of the districts in each plan are within 0.5% deviation from ideal. Our Assembly plan maintains or creates 50% Latino CVAP districts and one 50% Asian CVAP district at the state level. Our Senate plan maintains or creates 7 Latino Section 2 districts. Both plans comply with Section 5 by preserving or enhancing electoral opportunities for minorities in Section 5 areas. All districts are contiguous under the Commission's definition of contiguity, except for 3 Assembly districts and 2 Senate districts that include islands to which no means of transportation by water exists. from the mainland portions of the districts. In these non-contiguous areas, the mainland portions are contiguous. We have discussed redistricting with African American, Latino, LGBT, and environmental leaders. These plans accommodate the interests of these various communities and generally balance immigrant, low-income business, coastal, and agricultural interests. Our plans unite communities of interest based on social and economic data as well as community testimony. And in terms of keeping cities and counties together, our assembly plan splits 79 cities, and an improvement upon the current assembly plan, which splits 97 cities and keeps and our plan keeps a majority of the counties whole. Our Senate plan splits 47 cities and splits 21 counties in regions where districts were drawn. The splits occurred where we felt that we could draw 50% CVAP districts for minority communities. Also where we felt obtaining population equality required a split, or where splitting was required to maintain the integrity of a community of interest whose residents share similar social and economic characteristics. Oops, it's kind of frozen. It's frozen. Well, that's it. Thank you for your time today. Sorry, this laptop's. We hope this is really helpful as you draw the lines. Any questions?
That was more than it. Thank you very much. Commissioners.
Actually, we feel our entire team has joined us, Deanna Kitamura and Eugene Lee, and we're all available to answer questions.
Commissioner Anchetta.
Well, thank you. This is very impressive, and you've made a lot of progress since 20 years ago when I was working on this kind of things. So I have two questions. One, you referenced a report you're going to be submitting by Professor Barreto of University of Washington. Was that commissioned specifically for CAPIFER, or was it a pre-existing study?
Good morning. I'm Eugene Lee with the Asian Pacific American Legal Center. To answer that question, we commissioned that report from Professor Barreto after finding out that we could draw a 50% Asian American CVAP district in the West San Gabriel Valley. And so we understood that we could draw that 50% district, and subsequent to that, we decided that we should look into racially polarized voting analysis. We will be submitting that report very shortly, probably on Friday or early next week.
Okay, great.
The report does find strong polarized voting where Asian American voters prefer Asian American candidates and vote cohesively for those candidates, and also that non-Asian American voters vote against Asian American candidates who are the choice of Asian American voters.
Great, thank you. I think that's very helpful in terms of the Commission's work. So I have a specific question regarding your San Francisco districts. So it's AD 12 and 13 and SD 8 and 9. If you want to go back to those slides.
Yeah, unfortunately, the laptop is frozen, so we'll rely on our handouts.
All right. So maybe staff can do that, and for the commissioners to have their binders, they can, or their handouts, they can flip through. So I understand that your division between the division of San Francisco is predicated on largely socioeconomic differences that you've identified between various communities. So that's why the split goes largely north and south. The lines are north-south. However, when your Senate district lines are drawn, you don't nest. You do some adjustment, I think, in those districts. So you didn't entirely nest, but it's sort of close to nest. Well, it's close to your Senate lines are close to your assembly lines, but they're not quite the same. Right. And I understand the linkage of what I guess was 12, the western half of San Francisco with the peninsula. What I'm less, what I'm more curious about is the Senate District 8, which I believe from what you've said and what I'm reading in the materials, part of the predicate is that you're identifying an LGBT community that is both in San Francisco and in the northern part of the district. Is that correct?
Right. So we looked at a host of different, obviously, social and economic characteristics that we felt sort of called for that kind of divide within the city of San Francisco. Our coalition had heard from LGBT stakeholders who, on the assembly side, right, were interested in maintaining the integrity of their communities around, in around the Castro region. They had also identified service centers and LGBT sort of friendly constituencies in Marin County. And so that was the primary foundation for drawing those communities north into Marin. Again, on the west side, drawing further into San Mateo County provided the opportunity to unite those cities with large Filipino American populations whole and include them in the same district. So, our drawing of that district was also informed by that priority that the local coalition had.
Okay, so in other words, you preferred to do, well, obviously preferred because this is what you did, sure. But that was a preferred split compared to linking what were for your assembly maps 12 and 13.
Right.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. And just to follow up, obviously 8 is a really geographically and demographically diverse district. You're running from the north, which includes some rural areas, through Marin County, and then you're basically going down to Bayview and Visitation Valley and some much lower income areas of San Francisco. Do you have any other predicates other than the LGBT community of interest that you are using to justify the breadth of this district?
We really relied on that community of interest to help guide the drawing of that particular Senate district.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other? Yeah. Commissioner Antai.
Very well done. Very well done. Let's go down to San Diego County. We didn't get a lot of public testimony from API community groups in the northern part in San Marcos and in the center part of San Diego. How did you do your outreach in those areas? Could you kind of expand on that?
For outreach in all of the areas, we relied on our local lead groups. You can see on tab 2 who the lead groups are. And so the lead group there is SCAPL, and that organization did all the outreach to the northern areas. They used their various contacts, and we did get a couple of people from the northern parts to attend our meetings.
Thank you.
Commissioner Yao.
If we can go to the summary page where you talk about splitting cities, I'd like to get a feel as to the assembly map where you have given us recommendations. How many cities were involved with those assembly maps? You identify 79 cities that were split.
Right.
What is the total number of cities?
Yeah, the number of cities actually increased. The number of census-designated places actually increased from 2000 to 2010. So this, the total number of CDPs, right, census-designated places. So these include both incorporated cities and unincorporated areas that are recognized as geographies by the U.S. Census Bureau. So we divided 79 of 1,427, which was about 5% of all census places statewide.
Do you have any data with regard to the formal cities? I thought the number was 488. Somebody corrected me yesterday as 480.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The formal cities, the formal recognized cities, not including unincorporated cities.
We can get that to you, but we did not break down incorporated versus...
I got the feeling that throughout the whole presentation, you were grouping like income type of communities together. I've been struggling with the thought of whether economic diversity is something that's important to a district or not. But it seems like you favor grouping the like income together as compared to the other consideration.
I mean, as part of the process, sort of identifying communities of interest, we had affiliated community organizations from throughout the state identify characteristics, social and economic characteristics that were important to them, that define their communities, that were important to them in the work that they do. And our goal here was to include areas with similar social and economic characteristics in a district.
So grouping socio-economic similarities is one of your key objectives.
Right. I mean, the idea is that folks having a greater number of constituents in a district who share needs and concerns make it more likely that the given legislator will address those needs and concerns.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Bogai, and then
Commissioner Yao, if I could just add something really quickly, and I just wanted to add that this is not a top-down decision. This is driven very much by a bottom-up process. We mentioned the meetings that we've done throughout the state, and this is the preference of the community members we met with to draw districts based on these socioeconomic similarities, so that, as my colleague mentioned, their policy interests would be more effectively addressed in Sacramento.
thank you. But we're going to have to move along, Peter. Commissioner Columbus-Malai.
Thank you again for all your work. I actually want you to go back up north to Alameda, if you don't mind. I have questions regarding two of the assembly districts there, regarding 19 and 20. I appreciate the efforts, I think, of what you're trying to do in terms of community of interest and the groupings. I was wanting to make sure I understood your reasoning for a couple of groupings. One is that within 19, I see that Union City is split off from Newark, Fremont, which are in 20, and I think we have had significant testimony, COI testimony to date, that indicates that those areas should be grouped together. And then when we look at the cluster between 19, 20, and 16, in the assembly districts, we've split the tri-county area. Depending on how you define tri-county
Sure.
area, you might say it's split 2 ways, you might say it's split 3 ways. And so I wondered, was this the only way that you could protect the communities of interest you wanted to? Did you explore other options, and what challenges did you run into?
Well, with all these districts, obviously it was quite a struggle to integrate all these diverse interests into a single proposal. And as you guys know, right, the how districts are drawn in one area is affected by how districts are drawn in other places. As the population sort of flowed around the Bay, we had about 180,000 people who we left over that we needed to include in Alameda County. That resulted in the creation of proposed Assembly District 20. To pick up that additional population, we considered going into Union City. Our coalition members were vehemently against dividing Union City. And as you can see, sort of from the geography, there's very few other places you can go except towards Pleasanton. And unfortunately, we had to divide the city in that instance. The coalition did feel that, did recognize that was something that they had done. On the Senate side, it was a priority for them to include Pleasanton whole in a district and unify that Tri-City area. To kind of speak to the issue of Union City versus Fremont, we had many members of the Filipino community in our coalition who had preferred to include Union City with other Filipino-American communities in Hayward and San Leandro. So that was the logic behind drawing those areas together. And as you can see, they're very similar socioeconomically. This is per capita income, but we looked at a host of different characteristics. But as I'm sure you're aware, a lot of these socioeconomic characteristics kind of are correlated, right? And so we see that per capita, this map of per capita income is a good sort of proxy for a lot of other variables that we've been looking at.
Okay, Commissioner Blanco and then Commissioner Aguirre.
I have some questions about San Diego.
Apologies.
That's okay. There we go. So on the first, I have a couple of questions. One about the Assembly, and then a related one about the Senate District. So your Assembly District 75 goes from a very wealthy coastal community, La Jolla, and the university, out to very rural border of Ramona, and goes through, very different from La Jolla all the way through to Ramona, the edge of Ramona. Those are all very different communities, including socioeconomically. And so I want to know,
Sure.
I'm sure it had to do with what you did in other places, but I think that presents a potential problem. And in addition, we had a lot of testimony when we were in North County about Escondido, just about that sort of rural area there, that the North County, in a sense, has an east and a west. So, but that 75, can you explain that to me? And then I have a question about the Senate that kind of flows from that.
Sure. I mean, our coalition looked at a number of different social and economic characteristics, income being one of them. Actually, one of the priorities of the coalition, in addition to sort of maintaining the integrity of Mira Mesa, Rancho Penasquitos, Sorrento Valley, and some of the surrounding areas, was to recognize the socioeconomic divide between those communities and areas further north. I wish we had included a slide of the per capita income data for this region. Certainly, areas towards the coast are generally wealthier than inland areas. What we saw was a very high concentration of wealth around Del Mar, Rancho Santa Fe, Fairbanks Ranch, just on the other side where you see the label for the 56 freeway, just west of Rancho Penasquitos. Those areas are quite wealthy. And so recognizing that divide sort of forced the population to move more in a north-easterly direction. And those areas, particularly around Poway, are more similar socioeconomically with Rancho Penasquitos, Mira Mesa, than are areas further north, including Rancho Santa Fe and Fairbanks Ranch.
Okay, I have a question about this. And I'm concerned about this coastal with such an inland all-in-one assembly district. I think their interests may be very different. And then on the Senate, sort of similarly to what happened in San Francisco, the Senate districts don't nest your assembly districts. So you didn't have a coastal assembly district. But then when we go into the Senate, you have a completely coastal Senate. And then you have a eastern Senate, 39 and 38, which is, so you explain to me or to us what the thinking was for drawing the Senate district so differently from the Assembly.
The additional Senate population created opportunities to unify communities of interest. In this proposed Assembly District 38, that district can span the entire length of the coastal region of San Diego between Coronado and Camp Pendleton. To the east, then, this district is sort of more of an urban, San Diego-based community of interest. It spans north up to, again, obviously you see the 8040, which appears to be a potential voting rights district for Latinos. So that portion was included in the Latino voting rights seat. The remainder of that area, south from Chula Vista, north, again, the idea up to the northern part of that district is actually still the city of San Diego. And obviously many of these cities are kind of strangely shaped. And to maintain the integrity of those areas, we had to go north towards that direction. So this 8039 we conceptualize as more of an urban San Diego-based district, and then with very different interests than folks in 8037 who are more rural, desert-based communities.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Getty.
Yes, thank you for your great work. Looking at in southern San Diego County, it looks like your Assembly District 77, I presume, even though the graphic doesn't show this, I presume that 77 goes south from the graphic that you presented down to the Mexican border.
That's right.
Capturing San Isidro.
That's right.
But my question is, how far east does it go? I'm looking at border culture cities and border culture and border cities as a COI. Then how far does it go? So the question not only applies to Assembly District 77, but it also applies to Senate District. It looks like Senate District 40.
Right.
We received some information and testimony that perhaps those lower Assembly districts and Senate districts might extend all the way to Mexicali,
Sure.
Imperial County. So because we have to use a larger lens perhaps than your area of analysis, in this case being San Diego, did you receive any input on such a connection with that?
Oh, we certainly did. I mean, obviously in the drawing of this district, our proposed Assembly District 77 and the Senate District, proposed Senate District 40, one of the primary considerations was compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act. So our concern was that Latinos could make up 50% of the citizen voting age population in both this area, 8077, but also on the Senate side. And actually, we don't include the remainder of this district, but it's a rather non-compact district, sort of based on current configurations on the Senate side. Approaching this, we were not initially thinking that Latinos could make up as much of the citizen voting age population on the Senate side as they do. So when the new data came out, we realized that constructing that particular district as a district in which Latinos made up 50% of the citizen voting age population was possible, and that we may need to do it to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act. So that said, you have the sheet from our binder in front of you. Those of you who have brought your very heavy binders with you can see that district as well, and you can see that sort of what we tried to do here was to recognize as much as possible that border community of interest. In Assembly District, obviously the Senate District is much larger and spans, as you can see, sort of this the area east of San Diego, the length of the border into Imperial County. And again, some of these districts we recognize were not compact, but that we may have to draw to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act.
Thank you
Sections
very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a very informative presentation. Thank you. Next, we'll have the African American Redistricting Collaborative.